And these are the last 20 problems on pretest number 5 on the math portion. So this problem 21 is a question about like a negative over a negative is a positive, so on and so forth. So A is negative and B is positive. So if that's the case, then the A minus B will be negative. And then A is negative. So you're dividing a negative over a negative on the left side. You can use numbers too. So make A -3 and B 5. So that would make a -8 on the top and over -3, which would be 8/3. So try numbers whenever you can. A lot of times that works very nicely. So here, what you're actually doing is you need to calculate the complement because they're saying estimates the number of eighth graders who have fewer than 2 siblings. So 34.6% of the students reported they had at least 2. So the complement of that is fewer than 2. So you have 1,800 eighth grade classes in the state. So you need to multiply that by 26 because of that gives you the total then. And then you minus from that, so that would be how many have at least 2 siblings. And so, and then you're going to minus from that the complement. So I'm sorry, this is how many have at least 2 siblings, 34.6% of 1,800 times 26. So the complement of that is 1,800 times 26 minus that number will give you the other number. So whatever this is underneath here would add to this total. So I suppose I should figure that out so it makes some sense to you. So 1,800 times 26 times 0.346. So 16,193 is this number. And then 46,800 is this number. So there's 46,800 total students. And then 34.6% of those have at least 2 siblings. So that's 16,193. So the complement is this number that's remaining that have fewer than 2. And then you sum all those up, that gives you the total. So this represented the total here. This was at least 2 siblings. How many did? And this was fewer than 2. All right. So the idea of complements in probability, or I guess counting would be the better way to talk about that. So problem 23, which of the following functions represents the relationship? So you want to do a slope calculation, but the problem is, so I just picked the first 2. You have to know that this is in thousands of dollars. The equation's represented that way. So you have to lap off the last 3 zeros when you calculate the slope, or else you'll get 7,500 p minus 10. But you just want to write those 2 down. And also the trick is that the R is the Y and then the P is the X. And so I wrote those wrong. So when you write these, you got to write them that way. Sorry about this. These are not written in the correct order. I was overthinking things with this, thinking that they were trying to So we have 128, 950, and then 176, 1310. You do want to keep the whole XY thing straight. So this is P and then R, P and then R. That's in terms of Y equal, or R equals in terms of P. There, that's right now. So 1310 minus 950 in the top over 176 minus 128 in the bottom. And that's going to give you the slope. That's all you need to do. But the trick of that was you have to lap off the 3 zeros. Okay, so 40% discount off the original price along with a 20% off that discounted price. So if you take 40% off the starting price on Glenview, $140,000, it gives you this. You can do the whole, or I'm sorry, 20%. So it was had a little bit of a brain fart there. I don't know that that's the best way to show it. Perhaps the best thing to do is run through the choices. So it's the second one. And so you're going to start with a 40% discount of that price. So you're going to minus 40% of it, 291,700. And that gives you that. And then you get another 20% off from that. Here's your answer function. And so you end up with the 140,000 that is the start price there, or close to it, the one that's on Glenview Street. So that's what you want to end up with. This probably isn't the best way to show it. What I did is I started with 140,000 and I did a 40% increase, got that number, and then did a 20% increase to get to the final result. That's also an acceptable way. Either way, I guess, is fine. This might just be a little bit hard to understand. So this is the same as saying 140,000 plus 40% of 140,000 equals that. And then this is a way of saying take the $233,333.33 and do a 20% increase of that. A lot of threes here. And then that would give you that. That's probably a better way to do that. I guess what I was doing here is thinking that it's 60% of some new number, go backwards by dividing by 0.6, which is the difference between 1 and 0.4. But it's probably best to do this, add a 40% to it, get that number, 233, and then add a 20%. That's the easiest understanding of that problem. Okay, problem 25. Here, another kind of language type of thing. I'll zoom in a little bit. 36 chose the first picture in the set. Among the remaining 150 participants, few people chose the first picture in the set. If more than 20% of all participants chose the first picture in the set, which of the following best describes the possible values of P? Okay, so you want to do 20%, more than 20% of all participants. How do you say that? That's this right here. The greater than, more than 20% of all participants. And then it is more than that. The 36 chose the picture in the first set. That has to be greater than the 20% of the total. That's what that is getting at. there. It's kind of said right here, if more than 20% of all, it shows the first picture in the set. Okay, so it's kind of confusing language there. That makes it a little bit hard, but it is actually this, if more than 20% of all, shows the first picture in the set. Let me include the underline all the way there. That's the key in that. So that's where that greater than comes in there. 26. Okay, so surface area of a cube. So one side has an area of this. Cube has 6 faces. So you can square root that to get one side of the cube. So if this is, imagine seeing one side of the cube, then this is its area here, a squared over 16, and then you want to, why is that looking like that? You want to square root that to get the side of it. There we go. So a over 4 is each side. Well, then you want the perimeter. So you got to add up all of those sides. Kind of a hard question with that, for sure. 27, the mean score of 8 players in a basketball game was 14.5 points. So they scored a total of 116, 8 times 13.5. And then the mean score of 7 remaining was 12 points, reduced by 1. So they scored a total of 84. So there was a reduction of 32 points. So because you remove that highest score, the highest score is 32. So here's the key words here in that. Okay, 28, another y equals mx plus b question here. Okay, so slope of this line is 1/2. Okay, so 4 times that is 2. So that's the slope of this, and then passes through the point 0, -4. So you build from these two items, you build the mx plus b there. And then what is g of 9? What does that mean that x is 9 in the new equation? That does not mean g times 9, by the way. It just means put 9 into for x and then evaluate that. Problem 29 is one that I would not expect you to know. I don't think we cover how to construct circles in Algebra 2, maybe in pre-calc. So what you have to do is you have to complete the square on x and y on both. So you would divide the 20 by 2, 10, and you would square that. And you'd divide the 16 by 2, 8, and you would square that number, and you would add those to both sides. So we did a little bit of work on completing the square. So that might ring a little bit of bell. Then I taught, drag and drop these numbers up here inside the parentheses. And then you have to simplify on the right side. If you can do that, that would be great, but you'd have to know how to do that. And then you have to know that the equation of a circle is written like this: x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. I don't think that's on the front page of this. I look it up. I don't think I see it. Nope, it is not. But then you'd have to know that, and then hk is the center, and then the square root of this number is the radius. That's a hard problem, just from the standpoint that you don't get that a lot. One of those that, I talk about some problems you need to abandon and maybe skip. That's one of them. Okay, so which one of these, you're trying to factor that apart. And so you're doing the FOIL product of each. And so I wrote the final result down. So you have an outer plus an inner on each of these that's going to cancel. So looking at the front end product and the back end product, actually D, that doesn't happen. But these are all the FOIL products, and B is the one that's going to work out because you have the square root of A times square root of A, which just gives the A. A is close, but you need an A squared on the end there. $31 is a proportion. So 5 is to 3730 as 2 is to X. So again, go across. So we're dealing with horsepowers on the top and then watts on the bottom, or you could have it the other way. And do the cross product. So 5X is 7460, and then divide and you'll have it. 32, pretty easy. 29 times 1/3, that's all that ends up being. And you get 9.67. The 36.25 was irrelevant, unless this would say the width. And then the ones you have to fill in the answer to. Okay, so here you got to set these equal for X because it says they're equal, and then you replace that in each of those, and then you'll get the distances that you add together. Okay, so here's one where remember that the f of X is Y, that you're going to put in for X and Y. So you're going to put 2 in for X, 5 in for Y, and then solve for K in the end. So that's 4, and then you would add 4. A lot of times, you know, if you see a point given and then some equation, you're going to have to substitute that in. Just get ready to do that. 35, so here's a problem that we did a little bit of something like this in Algebra 2, although I think it was the work standard assignment, which I didn't make everyone complete. I made it optional. So you have the sides in a rectangular garden like this. One side is 5 longer. And so the area is 104, meaning you need to multiply those two together. You're also really thinking about two numbers that multiply to 104, which may not be obvious to you, but that sometimes you can mentally do it. And then you're just figuring out the zeros of this quadratic, which are -13 and 8. And so you're going to throw the -13 away, and 8 is the width, I guess, and then the length is 13. So they want to know the length, so you fill in the 13. Problem 36. A little bit hard, but the trick is you need to draw this line here. It's called an auxiliary line when you do that. So you put that in, and then you can do these. These are identical triangles because that's a radius, and that's a radius. So if that's 20, then that is, and that is, and that is, because these are all sides opposite equal, these are all angles opposite equal sides. And so that makes these 140 by angle sum, making this 80 by 360. So 360 minus 280 is 80 when you just focus on the angles at the center there. So drawing in that auxiliary line is what makes that a little more challenging. Okay, 37. This is a distance, rate, and time problem, both of these. And so you need to think this is the distance here, this is the rate, and this would be the time in hours that makes that true. So how did I get this? By multiplying here. So miles times miles per hour. 0.6 times so no, check that, it's divided by, so we don't know the time, so you want to do 0.6 divided by 25. to give the 0.024. So you do that for all of these. So the total would be 0.372 hours with that. So you need that to fill in everything on the questions that are being asked. Okay, so what was her average speed in miles per hour during her drive that morning? So 24 minutes over 60. So we need to convert that to hours. So that's 0.4 hours. The total miles is 17.4. I should have done that total over here. And you don't need to total those because that would not make sense. So then you're going to divide that by the 0.4 hours, and that would give you the miles per hour over that time. Okay, and then problem 38 to end this. Okay, so basically what's going on is you need to figure out, she starts her how many more minutes does Miss Simon take to arrive at her workplace if she starts her drive at 7 a.m. than if she starts her drive at 6:30 a.m.? So this line here shows the total amount of time if there's a 33% increase in the second piece here. So that's what the 1 point by multiplying by 1.33, that would give you a 30% increase in the time there. So that's a total of 0.474 hours. Typically students would do 0.308 times 1 plus 0.38 times 0.33. That would give you the total hours. And then you're just going to subtract that from the original if you just normally drove without that increase. And so that's 0.102 hours. So that needs to get multiplied by 60 to turn it back into minutes. So this is hours and then multiply by 60. A hard problem again. To know what to do, you had to know that this is a distance, rate, and time chart. This is distance in miles. This is rate in miles per hour. So this would be hours by dividing backwards. Distance over R, D over R would give you the time. And then you're going to take that over here with the question that they're asking. 0.4 hours, 17.4 over 0.4 hours to give you your total average speed. And then here to do that 33% increase to give you a new set of hours, find the difference and multiply by 60. So actually 2 harder problems to end with on the math with calculator section of your pretest.